Welcome to Drinking from the Fire Hose. I'm Roger Wilcox and I'm co-hosting this series with Murray McMillan, who you'll see shortly. This 10-minute video is aimed at equipping managers to improve their team's performance. The focus of this video is creating a problem-solving culture. We're going to give you some practical tips on how to do that, and at the end of the video, we'll leave you with an activation, as per usual, enabling you to immediately put into practice what you've heard. So what's the goal? The goal is for leaders to create a problem-solving culture within their team and to transform each team member into a skilled problem solver. So why is it important for leaders to create a problem-solving culture? Well, one of the characteristics of great performing teams is that every member of the team are empowered to eliminate errors and continually make improvements. Excellent results come when everyone is actively involved in eliminating defects that erode value, reduce efficiency, or create waste. And we'll touch on more of those shortly. In fact, teams without a problem-solving culture at the heart of them are typically about 25% higher cost than world-class performers. When problems get ignored and not solved or not reported, then people start creating workarounds to get things done. That creates inefficiency, it creates waste, and ultimately increases costs. Skilled problem solvers get to the root cause of the problems and eliminate the underlying causes. This completely eliminates repeat failures. Now, you may be wondering, who is this actually for? I'm office-based, does it apply to me? Well, yes, it does. I'm site-based, does it apply to me? Well, yes, it does. It applies to you too. It applies to everyone and anyone who wants to improve their team's performance. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to my co-host, Murray McMillan, and over to you, Murray.
Okay, thanks, Roger. So yeah, we'll move on to current performance, a good way to assess, I guess, where you are just now. And the first part of that would be, so a few checkpoints, I guess. First part would be, are your team members able to problem solve? You know, are they familiar with some of the common techniques? You know, 3 C's, 5 Y's, there's a whole bunch of techniques out there. And I guess from my experience, most people are probably aware of them, but are they comfortable actually using them? And I guess reality there is you get more comfortable the more you use them. So it's definitely worth encouraging people to use them, get more confident, and therefore do more and more problem solving. So yeah, good check. How confident and aware of these techniques are your team members? Another part, which actually relates probably back to our previous video on visualization, is are the current problems your team dealing with, are they visible? I think there's sometimes a tendency to hide problems away. Sort of brush them under the carpet. Actually, we would suggest the complete opposite. They should be up front and center somewhere, so you know as a group, as a team, what you're working on and what the priorities are. And just one small point within that, I think there's sometimes a danger. We're talking about problem solving here, and Roger and I refer to defects at times. I guess it's worth not always seeing these things as a negative. I tend to look at them as an opportunity. So if you've got a problem or a defect, there's actually an opportunity to improve. So again, maybe encourage your team to look at these as positives rather than negatives. Another little check, and it's just, you know, I guess it's from experience around a whole bunch of industries, is do any of your processes or procedures have workarounds? So you've got this original, correct, very clear procedure or process for doing something. I guess there's a risk that over time that gets eroded because there are defects and problems and you've got workarounds and little steps are missed out. Is that the case in any of your processes and procedures? It's worth a check. And then why are we doing that? And I guess my final one, Roger, just on the current performance is problem solving left up to one person? Do you just send it off to the team leader? He or she will solve our problems. Maybe you've got some kind of problem solving expert, some Six Sigma black belt in the organization that you just default to. Again, suggestion would be get everybody involved. It's so much more powerful if everybody's involved. So a few checks on your current performance. And back to Roger for how do we actually achieve this goal?
Yeah, thanks, Murray. And that's a really interesting one. I've definitely seen at times when you go into teams and the only people who are problem solving is the Six Sigma expert, go to them and they'll solve it for you. But what we're trying to do is change that culture so that everybody recognizes problems and everybody is able to solve the problems themselves. So how do you achieve that goal? Well, the first thing I'd say is train every one of your team on how to actually recognize problems and defects. You may think it's obvious what problems are. However, all too often people are operating at a suboptimal level and just don't know it. For example, there was one team I know required every approval to have a wet signature. And that meant printing out a lot of paperwork, finding the person to sign the paperwork, scanning the paperwork to keep an auditable trail. Now, when coronavirus hit, they couldn't continue working this way. And they started to use the available technologies. And now what they do is electronically sign the documentation. It's speeded up the process. It's cut down on paperwork. It's reduced stationery costs. And this was a change that was forced upon them by coronavirus. However, they've been living this way inefficiently for years. And this is a good example of a defect that has been in place in the system that's been allowed to stay there. And now they've changed the ways of working to eliminate that defect. So what do team leaders need to do? What they need to do is to focus and train their team members on how to recognize problems and defects. There's numerous ways of doing this. One of the things I like to use is the lean manufacturing framework to help people identify defects and weights. It has the acronym TIMWOOD, which stands for the 7 wastes of transportation, inventory, motion, weighting, overproduction, overprocessing, and defects. And using that framework, you can start to really look at what you do and identify the problem areas that erode value, reduce inefficiencies or reduce efficiencies and create waste. And another great way of making problems visible is to apply 5S and different tools. I'll let Murray talk a bit more about those in a second. But we're going to focus in our longer term video on how to achieve those goals and spend more time focusing on each of these methodologies. So maybe over to Murray, let you talk about some of those ways on how to achieve the goal too.
Yeah, absolutely, Roger. And I think actually one that stands out to me is even just the 5 whys. I mean, it's such a common approach to problem solving, and it's so simple. Anybody can do it. It's really easy. So I would encourage everybody just to do that. It does not need to be difficult or scary. Just do it. And anybody with kids are the very best at this. Kids will ask you why all day long. So it's almost as if taking your steer from them. Just keep asking why until you get to that root cause. A couple of little tips in it. It's called 5 whys, but it can be 3 whys. Or it can be 7 whys. It can be as many whys as you need. But the real key thing is make sure you get to a proper, genuine root cause. And with that root cause, you want a root cause that you can actually do something about. So that's the key point. I would also encourage anybody that's doing this, whether you scribble on a whiteboard or a sheet of paper or whatever, capture it, because it's really good to share with your colleagues, and at the very least they can see your thinking. So how did you get to the point you got to in doing your 5 whys? Roger mentioned the 5S as well, so I'll not go into every part of that, but there's a number of techniques like that that just help you actually tidy up your work area, whether it's an office space or an industrial space, figure out what you need, how you can make it better. And again, labels and defects and problems can be things like lack of labeling, lack of signage, something that makes the job easier, safer, quicker. So it doesn't have to be complicated. Pick some really simple, easy problems to get after. And like one of our previous videos as well, action tracking is really important. So make sure, and don't tackle too many. I think last week we spoke about top 5. Maybe that's the way to do it. Top 5 issues, go after them, fully resolve them, and then pick another 5. So I guess over to you, Roger, perhaps for the activation for this short version.
Yeah, so in the longer term video, we're definitely going to show you about the 3 C's, the 5 whys, mind mapping. We're going to talk about creating that culture that's important. Some of the things about how to achieve that goal. We're going to talk about observable behaviors as well. But in terms of the activation, what I'd like you to do is go and ask each team member, what problems are they trying to solve this week? That'll be really insightful. So are people viewing their problems as negative things? Because we're definitely wanting the opposite of that. We want people to be viewing problems as opportunities to improve. So what's your response? Do they know what their problems are? Do they know how to resolve those for themselves? And also review your information board that we talked about in the Huddles and War Room video. Review your information board. Are problems actually visible? Are they talked about? Are they out there? So do those as your 2 activations. So back to Murray for you for the close up.
Yeah, I guess the final thing, as always, is go and do it. Probably my top tip for this one is don't feel you have to have all the answers yourself. So if you identify problems or defects, again, it's a team sport. So you may have been able to identify an issue or an opportunity. Use all the people around you to help you solve it. It doesn't need to be something you have to do. So again, don't let that put you off if you don't know the full answer. You've got a whole team of people around you. Go engage with them and see what you can get after. But yeah, the call to action as always is go and do it, go and try it. We'd love to hear how you get on. And if you need any help, give us a shout.